Hi guys! So have you heard about the latest news about GM or genetically modified food? It's about this weed killer called dicamba, and it doesn't only kill weed, it kills the human. If you haven't heard about the GM food before, let me give you a quick overview. GM food are food that comes from organisms whose genetic material, like DNA, has been modified in a way that does not occur naturally. For instance, through introduction of a gene from a different organism. So the purpose of this is to give them new and desirable characteristics, like some crops have a greater resistance to pests, some are more resistant to extreme weather fluctuations. The first commercially grown GM food crop were the flavor Severe tomato, which were released into the market in 1994 without any special labeling. They were made to be more resistant to rotting by California company Calgene. So if you're curious about GM food and want to try it, I can tell you more, but I of course don't encourage you to do so. The more popular GM food crops in the market now can be found are like corn, soybean, cotton and canola, and in some places there are GM potatoes, papaya and apple. So these GM crops are resistant to different properties like resistant to herbicides, bruising, and for the apple, it does not brown even after it's sliced. So GM food has its advantages and benefits. So for example, firstly, increased crop yield. Genetically modified food or crops have stronger ability to resist pests, insects, and even are engineered to withstand extreme weather or even fluctuations. With this, the amount of pesticide chemical used are reduced, and at the same time, their exposure to dangerous pesticides are also reduced. So furthermore, with the GM crops being able to withstand poor or severe weather conditions, there will be still enough yields and good quality crops. Farmers now are also able to grow crops in many different places that are initially not suitable for farming and plant cultivation. And as a result, farmers are able to produce a larger amount of crop or food. GM crops are also aids in the quality of food. Since the use of pesticides are reduced, the food won't be so full of chemicals. So secondly, financial affairs. With lesser money used for pesticides, farmers are able to save costs and focus on other aspects like maybe their machineries for farming. Oh, and don't forget, with higher yields and lower costs on pesticides, the price of food will go down and hence making it affordable for the lower income people, and in the long run might even reduce poverty. Thirdly, protecting the environment. According to an Oklahoma State University report, the increasing use of GM crops requires less time, tools, and chemicals, and this may help reduce greenhouse gas emissions, soil erosion, and environmental pollution, hence improving the general health of farmers, which can also indirectly benefit everyone's well-being. Adding on, deforestation is minimized as GM crops can be grown in more areas, and this will then increase oxygen and decrease carbon dioxide, balancing it out, and which in turn slow down global warming. In fact, British economists said in a study that GM crops have made significant contribution to greenhouse gas emissions by over 10 million tons, which is equivalent to removing 5 million cars from the road each year. So GM food has also benefits as it is able to provide more nutritious food, and according to Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, FAO, UN, certain GM crops are engineered to be more nutritious, for example, the vitamin and mineral content. This helps people get ready their daily nutrients and also in fighting against malnutrition in third world countries. However, GM has its bad sides too. So firstly, side effects on the human health like allergic reactions. By mixing genes from totally unrelated species, genetic engineering unleashes a lot of unpredictable side effects. They can result in producing new toxins, allergens, carcinogens, and even nutritional deficiencies. The American Academy of Environmental Medicine also cited in animal studies that shows organ damage, gastrointestinal and immune system disorders, accelerated aging, and infertility. Numerous health problems increased after the introduction of GMOs. The percentage of Americans with 3 or more chronic illnesses increased from 7 to 13% in just 9 years. Food allergies skyrocketed. Disorders such as autism, reproductive disorders, digestive problems, and others are also on the rise. And although there's no sufficient research to confirm that GMOs are a contributing factor yet, it's better to be safe than sorry. Secondly, GM food or crops are not 100% environmentally friendly. Although they are claimed by many that it is safe for environment, there are still some kind of substances that are not yet proven to be such. And you want to know something worse? These substances are remained hidden to us and we will never know. Thirdly, they actually lower the level of biodiversity. certain organisms in the ecosystem could be harmed. You see, when we remove a certain pest that is harmful to the crops, we could be removing another food source for another type of species. Thus might cause extinction of this species. And fourth, decreasing antibiotic efficiencies. Based on Iowa State University, some of these GM foods have antibiotic characteristics that are built in them, which makes them resistant or immune to viruses or diseases. However, when we eat this GM food, the antibiotic markers will linger and persist in our own body and making actual antibiotic medications less effective for us. Furthermore, these GM food are not tasty after all. They are observed to have unnatural taste compared to the original food sold, and this might be due to the substance added to their composition. Next, cross-pollination. Cross-pollination can cover quite large distances where new genes can be included in offspring of organic, traditional crops that are miles away. This will then result in difficulty distinguishing which crop fields are organic and which are not, posing a problem to the task of properly labeling non-GM food products. Oh, the most political disadvantage is the conflicts. For example, GM crops can cause a lot of issues in the merchant's daily life, as these products might encourage authorities to implement higher tariffs to merchants who will be selling them. And don't forget exploitations. Some countries might use this genetic engineering of food as a powerful weapon against their enemies. And next, economic concerns. Bringing a GM food to the market can be costly and also a lengthy process. As the agricultural biotechnology companies want to ensure that this is profitable, many new GM technologies and products have been patented. Consumer advocates are worried that this will raise seed prices to high levels, making it unaffordable to third world countries and small farmers, so eventually widening the gap between the rich and the poor. Despite all this, many scientists and the American Medical Association feels that GM food are safe to eat. They've said that they found no significant harm directly tied to genetic engineering, and there are no clear impacts on human health have been reported nor confirmed. And as for labeling of this GM food, now 64 countries are required to label GM food, and some of the countries include Thailand, United Kingdom, and Australia. So, after listening to both sides of GM food, what do you think? Well, if you ask the United Nations, they are pro-GM food. UN are very concerned about unfolding humanitarian crisis in South Africa and want to avoid widespread starvation and huge deterioration in health and nutritional status of the population. They support GM food, but at the same time, they feel that continued safety assessments are needed before they are marketed to prevent risk to human health and the environment. As for different governments in the world, their stand on GM food varies. Countries like Europe are more resistant to the use of crops, while some countries like US and Canada are the highest cultivators of GM crops. However, the public's opinion are somewhat the same and different. For example, in the US, some people feel that these GM crops are attempting to monopolize the market, and in other countries, some would want the GM food to be labeled so it will be safer, and for some, they are pro-GM food all the way, as they say that there are no scientific evidence associating GM crops with high risk for human health or environment. However, in my opinion, there's no doubt that GM food can be beneficial to the world, but there's no necessary or stated evidence that GM food are nutritious or healthy. They don't give any nutritional benefits, so why choose GM food then? Moreover, we don't know what we are risking yet. I've always believed that natural food are always the best, and don't you think there's a reason why certain nutrients can only be found in a certain food? For example, maybe it is made that way because the mixed reaction of the nutrients might cause harm to our body or for some people. We never know. We might not see it now, but in the long run we can't predict. Neither can the researchers do so now. So it's better to be safe than sorry, and always remember, prevention is always better than cure. There might not be strong evidence that GM food can cause harm to our bodies, but for instance, in this case, this weed killer aka dicamba caused animosity amongst farmers and lead to one of them being murdered. What else can GM food possibly do in the future? So I don't know about you, but I'm not gonna sit down and eat GM food.